This morning I want to talk about extreme faith, and this is actually something that I've preached on before, and the Lord was really impressing me this morning to go back to this message and teach it again, because sometimes it's great to get new, fresh revelation from God, but sometimes it's also important that we go back to the most important things in walking with Him, and faith is one of those. Faith is trust and belief. That's the definition, according to the Bible. Trust and belief. So it's not just about believing. You can believe in God, but if you don't trust Him, then you're going to have a hard time walking with Him. It's like any other relationship. I can believe that somebody loves me, but the trust is going to be built based on their actions, based on how they treat me, based on when the going gets tough and things aren't going the way we hope they would. They're going to show me that I can trust them. And God is the ultimate in that, because we can trust Him. The problem is that He can be a bit mysterious in His ways. He speaks to us, but not always. Or sometimes He'll speak to us in ways we didn't expect. Or maybe something will come in our life that we weren't expecting. And I guarantee you, almost everything we go through, God uses as a way to build our faith. Whether it's blessings or whether it's seasons of not feeling like you're blessed. Whatever you're going through in your life, God will use it to build your faith. I'm going to start with a joke. I love this joke, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat it. A mom drove to school one morning to drop off her two sons. Unfortunately, her younger son, who was in the 4th grade, was celebrating his birthday that day. But he was on crutches after an injury, so he couldn't carry the cupcakes into the school without help. So the mom asked the older son to help the younger brother carry them in. "I could," said the older brother, "but I'd really prefer not to." Spotting a teaching moment, the mom asked the older boy, "Son, what would Jesus do?" The older boy answered, "Jesus would heal him so he could carry his own cupcakes." That's so good. It never gets old. Okay. Done laughing at myself here. So we're actually going to be talking out of 1 Kings 19, verses 19 through 21. I'm going to read those, and then we're going to launch from there. 1 Kings, for those of you that don't know, that's in the Old Testament. So 1 Kings 19, verses 19 through 21 says, "So he," speaking of Elijah, "departed from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat." I hope I said that right. "While he was plowing with 12 pairs of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed over to him and threw his mantle on him. He left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, 'Please, let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you.' And he said to him, 'Go back again, for what have I done to you?' So he returned from following him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them and boiled their flesh with implements of the oxen and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he arose and followed Elijah and ministered to him." I love this part of the Bible because when you actually look at what's happening here, this is something that we can all relate to. When you get down to the nitty-gritty of what happened to Elisha in that moment, if you walk with God, you're going to have a time where you're going to face a crossroads just like he did. You're going to face where maybe a prophet or maybe God Himself makes it very clear to you the direction you need to go in your life. You might have a calling. You might get a word, whatever it may be. Something happens where the light bulb goes off, and all of a sudden you realize, this is where God has for me. This is where He wants me to go. And so in that moment, Elisha found himself at that crossroads, and he had to figure out what he was going to do. But what the Bible doesn't talk about, it's just talking about the context. It doesn't say anything about Elisha's heart. We've all been there in places where we get a call to do something, or we feel that we're led to do something, and maybe it's not what we expect. And in this moment, Elisha's heart became evident when you actually see what he was going through and how he responded to the word from Elijah. Clearly, he was excited, and he wanted to follow after Elijah. To have such an honorable call from a prophet like that, I mean, who wouldn't? Especially in those days in that culture. That was probably a huge honor to have a mantle put on you to go follow a prophet named Elijah. But we see that right after he begins to follow God's call for his life, Elisha has his mind or his heart stop him in his tracks. Something stopped him, and it was internal. Because he realized, what about my family? What about my friends? What about the people that I love? And I think he was in a situation that a lot of us face, where we feel something from God. We feel a word from God. Or maybe our life is taking a direction that we didn't think it would. And now all of a sudden, we start asking ourselves, what are we going to do? We have that choice. Are we going to follow what we feel led in our hearts? Or are we going to stay where we're comfortable? Are we going to stay where we know how things are going to end up? Or do we have the trust and belief to make that leap, to make that jump, to be able to follow with extreme faith? And that's what I'd like to propose this morning, is that Elisha was faced with one of those situations. He was given an opportunity to follow a very well-respected prophet. And he had a moment where he's like, wait a second. What about my family? What about my life? What about everything I know? Everybody has a choice. And it's always fun to watch the people that seem to be able to follow God and they just have that faith. And it's just not, it doesn't even seem hard for them. No matter what they go through in their life, they just project this confidence in their faith. But unfortunately, not all of us feel that. Or maybe in certain situations, it departs and we're like, hey, whoa, where's my faith? I didn't know my life was going to take this direction. Because maybe that's God's call on your life. Maybe he's preparing you for something 10 years from now or a year from now or whatever, and you got to go through a direction that you didn't think you would have to go through. God sees everything. And so he's absolutely going to allow certain things to happen to build your faith, to help you mature. And so we see Elisha in that moment. He probably had that heart's cry toward the Lord to follow him, or he wouldn't have been so excited to follow Elijah. But he still was that person that had that moment to sit back and say, well, wait a bit, what about my life? It makes it even more complicated if you don't even know what your call is in your life. At least Elijah kind of saw what was happening. He saw what Elijah was doing, that he was calling him to follow him, right? And then he had to make a choice from there. If you don't even hear from God, if you don't even know what God has for you, how much more complex is that decision going to be? You know, I remember like 10 years into my career, the Lord started ministering to me. He started talking to me on a very specific topic. And what he showed me was that I had never really asked what he had for me when it came to a career. All my life, since I was a kid, I had wanted to be a police officer. I had wanted to pursue that. It was my passion. I would get a fire in my eyes when it came to that job. But it was a very specific place I wanted to work. It wasn't just being a cop in general that I was in love with. It was this place that I wanted to work as a cop. And I didn't get that, but I still was able to become a police officer. And so I always reflect in my life. I always have self-reflection. Hey, God, what am I doing? Am I doing things right? Am I going the right direction? And this was a moment where he said to me, you never really asked me, because things were not quite working out the way I had thought they had, or the way I thought they were going to. Things were going in a direction that didn't seem right. And so what the Lord was bringing to my attention was the fact that we have to really be in tune with him. And he may give you a desire of your heart, and he may say that this is something for you. But we either go too fast or too slow. It's very rare that we just follow right on time. We'll either jump the gun or we won't jump when we need to. All too often, I jump the gun when it comes to my walk with God. And I've had to learn the hard way to stop and wait and let God do his thing. But it's this idea of choice. When God calls us, when he puts that call, that's why so many are called and so few are chosen. Because they face the exact same thing that Elisha was facing. And they chose to not be chosen because they stayed where they were comfortable. Because extreme faith is going to challenge you. Extreme faith is going to push you in ways that you are not comfortable. Your life will take a direction that you did not expect. When you give your all to God and say, I'm all in, Lord, I'm going to follow you. You should also be putting on your seatbelt and pulling down the rail on the ride, right? And keeping all hands and feet inside at all times. And trusting that no matter which direction you go, God's got you locked in. Because if you give God your all and you're ready and willing to walk with Him, you're going to be blessed. He is good. And He is going to take you to a place you could have never imagined. But you better buckle up. And you better be ready for the things that He's going to allow to happen in your life in order to build your faith. We have a bit of input in that as well. Sometimes we make decisions we shouldn't have, and that causes pain or delay or whatever. But God will still use those opportunities to help us grow. To me, faith is more like exercising than it is just making a choice. Right? I could just make a choice and say, I trust and believe in the Lord. Hallelujah. But again, that's just me saying I'm going to follow you, God, and not actually buckling up and getting ready for the ride. That's not me being really realistic with what I'm about to go through. And that's what I'm trying to teach y'all today, is that extreme faith is more like exercising. You can't just say I'm going to get fit. You can't just step into the gym and start shedding pounds. If you are going to exercise and do it right, you have to be determined. You have to be uber focused on what you're about to do because it's going to get hard. You have to have the resolve that no matter how difficult this gets, no matter how hard it is to push that weight or keep taking step forward on the elliptical, whatever, you've got to have the resolve to finish. You got to have the discipline to keep showing up every single day. You know, a few days ago, my daughter worked out and it was the first time in a little while. And man, she was sore. Every move she made was like, ooh, ah, ee, I accidentally bumped into her. She's like, Dad, I'm so sore. That would have been a great time to quit. That would have been a great time. Like, nope, I'm taking a break. That hurts. But she knows, because she's done it before, that it's just those first couple days of getting back into it, and then it kind of fades. And it's still going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt like that first day. The first day is the worst. You know, like I've taken a few months off from hockey. I'm not looking forward to the first game. It's going to be, my lungs are going to feel like they're going to explode. But really, truly having faith is exercising, right? You have to have that determination, that focus, that resolve, that no matter what you go through, it's not going to shake your trust or your belief in God. And not just in God, but that He holds you in the palm of His hand. If you really trust and believe in God, then every step you take, every day that you live, you will have a confidence within you that He's right there with me. I don't have to question whether or not I'm in the will of God because I am 100% yielded to Him. I am 100% bought into the fact that every single day I have to get up and exercise my faith by showing that I trust and believe no matter how hard it gets, especially when life throws us curveballs. It's a different kind of frame of mind. You know, you're not just making a choice to have faith. You're dedicating yourself to a belief and a trust in God. And you're willing to do whatever it takes to not allow that to be threatened. You don't allow the enemy to threaten your faith in God. You don't allow the world to threaten your faith in God. That takes work. That takes determination. I myself love reading the writing of Charles Spurgeon. Great mind for Christ. And he once wrote about faith. Faith is so precious, that which lives and triumphs through adversity. Tested faith brings experience. You would never have believed your own weakness had you not needed to pass through trials. And you would never have known God's strength had His strength not been needed to carry you through. I believe what Charles Spurgeon wrote there is a very, very key element to our faith. How many here are thankful for the extremely hard times you've been through? How many here are thankful for the disappointments you've faced in your life? How many here are thankful for the pain that you've had to go through? And I'm not at all suggesting that this is all at God's direction. Life is life. We have free will, and everybody else in this world has free will. And that means that we're going to have disappointment. I tell this to people all the time. I told this to my wife all the time. I know you think I'm perfect, honey, but at some point in our marriage, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm going to pop your little bubble of thinking that you're marrying some perfect guy. And it took a while because, look at me. Just kidding. You think it's easy to look this good? I'm just kidding. Every single person you ever meet in your life will at some point disappoint you. If you haven't learned that now, learn it. Younger generation, learn it. Don't put so much faith in people that when they disappoint you, you're shocked. I remember the first time I did that, and I know I've told this story before, but he was a great, great friend of mine. A great friend of mine. And he had been discipling me. He was a great Christian. He had his own struggles, and I kind of saw that, but we were doing the worship team together at the church that I was at, and then we started a little band on the side where we were writing music. It was so much fun. And we would go out witnessing. And it was so much fun. This guy meant so much to me in that moment. I don't even think he realized it. And I started hanging out with him all the time. And then at some point, it just ended. He just didn't answer my calls. I didn't hear from him literally for 6 months. And we were hanging out at least twice a week. Once on Sunday for worship, and then once during the week, I would drive up to his house. He lived an hour away. And then the next time I talked to him after that 6 months of not talking, I remember he just was so nonchalant, like nothing happened. And it was nonchalant. He was a father. He had a daughter, and she was really busy, I think, with gymnastics. They would travel all over the country and sometimes around the world. And life just took over. But it was different for me because of how I looked at him, how I looked at that relationship. I put unrealistic expectations on him, and that's why I was kind of crushed when he disappointed me, in my perspective. He didn't really disappoint me, but in my perspective, he disappointed me. Why? Because I set him up in a way that is unrealistic. And so when we go through life, we have to know, because people are involved, things are going to go wrong. Things are not always going to work out the way that you think they are. But we have to be thankful for those mountains just as much as we're thankful for the valleys. I grew up in a valley. It's beautiful. It was an incredible place. And the mountains were too, but not going up them. Going up the mountain was horrible. But man, once you got up there, it was great. We have to be thankful for both, right? We have to be thankful for the storms that come to our life. That sounds counterintuitive. Why would I be thankful for something that comes to my life that seemingly is difficult or is going against what I think my life is supposed to be, or the direction that my life is supposed to be? Well, it's exactly what Charles Spurgeon said. Without these things, we could never know what faith in God truly looks like until you see Him strong for you. Until you go up that mountain, day in and day out, pushing up that journey of trying to reach this height that God is taking you to. You'll never know how strong God is until you lean into Him with your weakness. He wants to show Himself strong to every single person. And that takes that extreme trust and belief. No matter what I'm going through, I'm going to be thankful every single day because my God's got me. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what it feels like. I don't care if it feels like all hell is breaking loose in my life. It doesn't matter because God's got me. And I can be thankful. And I personally have been through that. Where I'm at now in my faith is way different than where I was at 20 years ago. Why? Because of the mountains and the valleys. Because of the storms that I've had to go through. And I see God time and time and time again be faithful and show up. He's never late. He's never early. We really could never know how glorious His strength is until we operate in our weakness. And He shows that to us. So in that story in 1 Kings, God used Elisha to show what extreme faith looks like. And make no mistake, Elisha deciding to follow Elijah, that was no small thing. You know, sometimes in the Bible, it goes real quick through a story. And so you're just reading the story like, oh, okay, and then he did this, and then, okay, he followed Elijah. But you got to stop and put yourself in that person's shoes. What was that like? Him deciding to follow Elijah. How is that no small occurrence? Well, Elisha was about to walk away from everything and everyone in his life. Everything he knew. He was about to walk away. To do what? To just follow a prophet. He's about to give up everything to follow a prophet. You know, when I was younger, if I were to come home to my dad and tell him, hey, I'm leaving the house and everything I own here with you because some prophet told me to follow him. I'm going to give up my job. I'm going to leave all my friends. And I'm leaving all you guys, my family, to follow this prophet. They might not think I'm using sound judgment or good decision making at that moment. They're probably going to ridicule me and think that I'm not thinking things through. Right? This is putting ourselves in Elisha's shoes. He was in a moment where he was ready. He was primed to make that leap of faith with God. And that's a huge decision because he's leaving everything and everyone he knows. And I wonder if Elisha's family thought he was nuts for even wanting to do this. Did they have that response when he goes and tells them, yo, I'm out? Like, what's wrong with this kid, man? He's supposed to take over the family business. Why would he do this? Why would he do this to us? Why would he leave everything? Y'all know what I'm talking about? These things that come up with friends and family where they'll put their opinion on it, even though you didn't ask for it. They just feel so inclined to, hey, this is what I think. You really need to hear me? No, I don't. But I kind of like Elisha's style, right? As he was leaving, he remembered those relationships. Remember what I said? He's like, oh, wait, what about my parents, my family? Right? So he didn't just abruptly leave. That's how it first started. And then Elisha pumped the brakes. And he's like, wait a minute, my family. He stopped and he took the time to go back. And he served his family with a feast. He connected with them first before leaving. And he made sure that the things in his family relationships were all in order before he departed. So he wasn't being hasty about it. He didn't just abruptly stand up and leave. And maybe God did call him to do that. But he wanted to go back and make sure that, hey, let me make sure everything's in order because I am about to leave. That doesn't mean that everybody was silenced because of that. You know, I remember when I moved to Texas, it was all God. Everything was lining up and I was getting all things in order with my family and everything so that I could come out here. And I still heard a lot of negativity from certain family members and friends, basically saying I'm nuts for coming out here for a girl is what they thought. But what they didn't realize is that the girl was the perk. I was coming out here for God. Lindsay was just the icing on the cake. God had called me to follow him. And I had to have extreme faith. I had to believe in that. But I first had to make sure that, hey, let me make sure everything's in order, just like Elisha did. Elisha made sure of that. He was walking away from the security in his life. Extreme faith is going to require you to do that at some point. The thing that you know is normal, you're going to have to walk away from it. The thing you find comfort in, at some point, you're going to have to walk away. We get accustomed to the familiar, right? We get comfortable in our ways and our decisions because they bring us a certain reliability to our life, something that we can count on. Every single one of us every day have things like that, right? Where we're going to find that food, that shelter, that safety. We trust in these things. We trust in the processes that we have built in our daily lives, a daily grind that we go through so that we can have that stability in our life. And then because of that, we trust in those that they're going to give us those results. And when God calls us out of our comfort zones, that's when we start questioning him. Well, God, whoa. How am I supposed to walk away from all this? How am I supposed to do any of that? You don't know what I've been through, and I'm just supposed to walk from all this? I can't give this up. I can't let that go. It's all just stuff that we're hanging on to because it's comfortable, and we can rely on it. We understand it. We know how things are going to work, and so there's security there, or at least a perception of security. But extreme faith is actually no different. Extreme faith is just realizing all those things within God and then trusting in them. Not just believing, but trusting in them. To truly step into our calling with God, we must be willing to follow His design and walk away from the carnal securities in our lives that are taking the place of our faith. Bet you never thought about it like that. There's a lot of things, I guarantee you, every single one of us, there's a lot of things in our lives that we have set up in place where faith is supposed to be. Anything that stretches you to believe in God for, you have something carnal in place. An extreme version might be a job. Maybe God called you to do something. And if you walk away from your current job, how are you going to pay your bills? You have built in something around your life where you can rely on it. And it's understandable. It's hard to walk away from something that big where all your security pretty much is derived from. But the point is if God is calling you to do something like that, then you got to be willing to trust that. You also got to make sure you're hearing Him right, because that sometimes gets in the way. You tune into the wrong radio station and it's telling you to go left when the next radio station would have told you to go right. But when you know that you know that you know in your heart what He's telling you, you got to be willing to give up the things that are in the way of that are taking the place of your faith, right? It's all about a relationship with the Father that is based on belief and trust in Him completely. And Jesus is the author and finisher of our faith. He looked beyond the cross. He looked beyond what people thought of Him. And Jesus walked by faith, not by sight. He walked completely by faith. He walked by hearing the word of the Lord, and He stepped out based on that word. And He believed, and He trusted. There's 4 things that I think that can help anyone to walk by faith. It's taking action in your faith, focusing on where you're going, not where you're at, staying strong in opposition, and managing your heart. Faith without works is dead. You can't have faith if it isn't also followed by actions. Elisha had been working, plowing the field, when Elijah then placed the mantle upon him. Would he have been able to accept that mantle and that call from God if he just kept plowing? If he just kept going and just kind of like was oblivious to the fact that something supernatural just happened? God just put a call on his life and he just kept whistling forward with the plow behind the oxen? No, he had to be willing to drop everything that was important to him. Those things that gave him security, he had to be willing to drop those. That's a huge decision to be able to follow God. Each one of us have a call from God, and it's going to require you to walk away from certain things or certain people in your life. And only God can show you who those are or what those are. But He will make it obvious to you. If you keep pressing in and build that relationship with Him, He's going to show you what you have to walk away from or who you have to walk away from. You have to be willing to put that faith into action. When He calls you to do something, especially walking away from people or walking away from things, you've got to be willing to do that. Focus on where you're going. It would have been easy for Elisha to get scared and not follow Elijah, right? He goes back to his family to have that feast the day before leaving with Elijah. Maybe starts having those doubt thoughts come in like, do I really want to walk away from all this? I mean, I got it pretty good. That's the moment, I believe, the chosen are separated from the called. And I'm just going to tell you, being a Christian almost my entire life, not perfect at it, but that's the biggest area of problems that I see, is far too many Christians don't step up and get past the called to step into the chosen. And God already sees this. He already knows it. But it's because of what I'm talking about. They're not willing to have that trust and that belief in God, to maybe walk away from something or walk away from someone, right? Or like I'm talking about here, focus on where God said you're going. Don't focus on where you're at. It's real easy in the moment, especially because things don't always happen right when we think they should with God. We're going to have some time to think about it. We're going to have some time to reconsider. Like, is this really what I should be doing? I had those moments when I came to Texas. Do I really want to leave this place that I love called home? And I didn't, but my faith was bigger than that. I had a lot internally that was pulling me to stay because of how much I loved that. All my family that I didn't want to separate from. But God still called me. I had to look to the future and believe that He was taking me somewhere. Not just the state of Texas. Like He was taking me down a path for my life. A trajectory that He foresaw that was going to take me to a place. Or a calling. Or whatever. I had to focus on that. I couldn't focus on the things in front of me. Where I was at. I had to focus on where I was going. And that's what Elisha did, right? He focused on his journey with God. What his journey was about to be. His mission that God had just called him to. Where he was going, not where he was at. Faith in action has to also have a vision. Where are you even going with God? What is that calling? What is that vision on your life? I mean, if you have no idea where you're going, you're going to drive in circles. I mean, I'm not going to say it. When I drive, we know where we're going. And if I don't know, I'm going to find out. And I'm going to make sure I know where I'm going. I don't like driving aimlessly. Now, if I'm just out exploring, then sure. But, back in the day before the maps on the phone, you better pay attention to what roads you're on and what direction you're going. Because if not, you're going to get lost in the city real quick. Real quick. Where are you going with God? If you keep yourself focused on where you're going with God, and that becomes your priority, well, the funny thing is that the present circumstances will never stand a chance against that. We get shaken up in our present circumstances, especially when they don't line up with where that vision is that God has for our life. Maybe they might even be opposite of where God has called you to be. But if you focus on where He's called you to be and not your present circumstances, the present circumstances eventually are going to fade. And you're going to start going towards that vision. It just takes time, or it takes a journey to build your faith, whatever you're going through. I guarantee you. You have to stay strong in opposition. I can almost assure you that if you step out in faith, you will surely face opposition. I remember right when we started this church in 2020, it was in the height of COVID, and we did a great work putting our faith in God, and we said, okay, God, we'll say yes. We went down to downtown in Braunfels, and we were walking around the city square and the gazebo and just praying and just warring with the Spirit. We were declaring the land for God. We were putting a stake in the ground spiritually, saying this is now God's territory, and we're going to start praying and interceding in the Spirit and just defeating the enemy and allowing the Holy Spirit to just come have His way in the city. It was kind of great that I had no idea what I was doing because the amount of spiritual warfare that I dealt with the year after that was ridiculous. It was so difficult. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong. Every spiritual attack you can think of, I had it. I mean, I made the devil mad. And it made me chuckle on the side like, wow, he's really trying here. But for like a whole year, I went through this. This opposition started coming into my life like it never had before. And I had never been a threat like that before to the enemy's camp. So of course he's going to change gears and start coming after me. Why would he want to let me do that, right? Like he's going to want to discourage me. He's going to want me to have that moment where I start rethinking and do anything he can to bring that doubt like, do I really want to start a church? Because this ain't fun. I'm not really enjoying myself at the moment. God, it's not fun. Take it away. Don't work like that. I can tell you right now, my walk in the Spirit and the strength that I have is almost exclusively from what God gave me through that season. That year that I went through all that opposition spiritually, that's like child's play to me now. But I wouldn't think that unless I had gone through it and actually focused on my faith, focused on where I was going, focused on God, right? Staying strong in that opposition. So I have to trust in God, and I have to understand that He holds me through those difficulties. If He called me to a place, if He called me to do a certain thing, then I know that He's going to bring me through it. No matter what the opposition looks like, I know I'm going to be able to get through it. The last thing you have to do to have extreme faith is manage your heart. If you don't think your flesh is going to cause you problems while walking in your faith, well, let me just list a few things that'll refresh your memory. Discouragement, despair, fear, anger, resentment, jealousy, frustrations. You go practicing faith, you go putting that trust and belief in God, I guarantee you your heart is going to poke its nasty head up with one of those. And you have to learn how to manage that. You have to learn how to manage your heart. You're the only one in control of your heart. The only one. If you're having a conflict with somebody, if you're having a spat with somebody, doesn't matter how wrong they are, you're in control of you. And they have no control over your emotions and your heart and your response. You have to manage you. And a lot of times that's actually what gets in our way. I was watching this video this last week. And it's a professor from Harvard, of all places. And that institution has kind of gone south recently. But this guy really had a great perspective on joy and on marriage. And a lot of his beliefs and views, I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but they lined up perfectly with what Christians believe. And it was one of the things he was talking about that can be one of the biggest detriments to marriage. Is that we get stuck in these things where I'm the one who loves and you're the one who hates. And then the other person thinks the same thing. No, I'm the one that loves and you're the one that hates. Meaning we get so self-absorbed that we're not stopping to pay attention to the fact that we might be the problem. Because look at what they're doing. And he, of course, as a professor, he did all these studies and he implemented some other studies. I don't remember off the top of my head what they were, but they had to do with like human psyche stuff. And he wasn't just finding correlation. He was also finding causation, where it was like, wow, people are really screwy in their heart. They're really messed up because they get so focused on the other person that they don't realize that they may be the toxin of that relationship because of their emotions being out of whack. And so his point in the video was that, outside of things like infidelity and those other things that are like, no, abuse, marriage should end at that point. But he was trying to say that most conflict between two married people, a couple, can be worked out if they focus on those things. If they both work on their own emotions, if they both focus on fixing themselves, everything else will work out. Everything will be worked out. The conflict at some point will be over because you'll both go in the right direction where now all of a sudden there is no conflict. And so these emotions that we feel in our heart, this powerful little thing inside of us that sometimes controls us and pushes us in places that, we shouldn't be, or takes us in a direction that we shouldn't go. It's going to come up when you walk in extreme faith. Again, if you want to walk with God and see the fullness of His glory in your life, you have to walk in extreme faith. You can't just halfway do it. That's the whole point of this message today, is that you need to latch on to everything I'm talking about. If you really want to see God's will in your life, if you want to see His glory fall upon your life and his vision is calling for you, you have to walk in extreme faith. So even Jesus had to face managing his own heart. When he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, the Bible says that he was so distraught. Distraught. Has anybody ever felt distraught before? Jesus was feeling this as he was praying in that garden. He felt distraught in his heart. He was the Son of God, but he was operating as the Son of Man. He had to, in order to be that sacrificial lamb. He couldn't call down his powers from heaven as the Son of God. He had to operate as the Son of Man. So that means that he had to manage his heart. That means he also had that thing inside of him that was trying to create problems, called his heart, the emotions. And he was distraught. And it was described to the point where he was sweating drops of blood. Okay, y'all, I've been distraught, but I ain't never been that distraught. Like, that's extreme. He saw what was coming. And the flesh inside of him, the heart inside of him, was distraught. Like, I have to go through this. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, right? I'm sure he felt all the same emotions. But it was that extreme faith, that trust and that belief in God that was going to carry him through that. Nothing else was going to carry him through that except for his trust in God. He had to trust that everything he was going through was going to lead him to that place to be our Savior. To pay that penalty once and for all, even though he knew it was going to be extremely difficult and painful and something that he maybe would struggle to deal with in his flesh. It's so to the point that he even asked God if there was another way that he could accomplish that mission. If you read those scriptures, he literally asks that of God in that moment of distraught. He says, God, are you sure there's no other way we can do this? Because this is going to suck. So he was even dealing with the same thing, right? But Jesus' relationship with the Father, he had that extreme trust, that extreme belief in the Father. And that's what pulled him through. So managing your heart will help manage what you're going through as you live out that extreme faith. Because your heart's going to get in the way. So you have to make sure that it doesn't do that. Be aware of it. Be aware of the fact that your emotions can get in the way. I really just want to encourage you guys today to step out in extreme faith. Just like Elisha did, right? Like he was able to accomplish so much because of stepping out in faith. But getting to that place took some work. And when you live with God, when you walk with God, when you allow the Holy Spirit to come into your life, you're going to have moments where your weakness has to be on display in order to truly show how strong your God is. Because you wouldn't truly know what faith looks like unless you've been through the storms, unless you've been up that mountain and been in that valley. It's those moments in our life that help show us that God is strong. And then we can launch from there when we actually get past the training phase, where he's maybe allowing some things to happen in your life to help build up that faith and his strength. And when you pass that test, now all of a sudden he's going to put you in front of that thing that he called you to, so that you can put that faith in action and you can start seeing his vision come into your life. So we have to be willing to step out in extreme faith. We have to be willing to step away from our carnal securities. Look at your life. Look at the things that you really rely upon day in and day out to give you security. And ask yourself, is that getting in the way of your faith? I'm not telling people to go quit your jobs. I'm just saying, what is your faith in? That trust and belief. Is it in that every 2 weeks or once a month you're getting that paycheck? Or is it no matter what paycheck I get, no matter when I get it, it's from God? That's what you have to evaluate. Where are you putting your faith? And when you do that, you can then step into your destiny with God, where he's going to take you, what his vision for your life is, what his calling for your life is. It's through that extreme faith that you find yourself on that path to get to the place where God called you, just as Elisha did. So that's it. That's my message. Oldie but a goodie.